Good evening. Welcome to regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Today's date is December 7th, 2016. Time is 6 minutes past 5 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Planning Commissioners Astorian.
Here.
Landrigan.
Here.
Manukian. Shabazian.
Here.
And Chairperson Lee.
Here. Can we get a report regarding posting of agenda?
Yeah, the agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, November 30th, 2016, on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website.
Okay, thank you. Can we have Commissioner Landrigan lead us pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please sit it.
That, I hope, was in the honor of the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
It was.
I knew it
Thanks.
was. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Approval of minutes. I hope you had a chance to look over the meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's approved. Oral communications. Do not see any oral communications. If anybody has oral communication, then you need to turn the card in. I do not see any, so we'll move on to the next item. Now, before we move on to the next item, I'd like to take today's agenda out of order, and because there was a special request on the zoning map amendment, zone change, case number PZC 1602270, the location 600 East Colorado Street and 533 and 539 East Elk Avenue, to be continued to allow staff to draft findings for our commissioners to consider. So I'd like to move this case up to the front and entertain a motion. Now, would there be date certain on this, or?
Yes, we're asking that it be continued to January 18th, the regular meeting, without further public notice.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Let's move it. Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Roll call, please.
Planning Commissioners Astorian.
Yes.
Landrigan.
Aye.
Shabazian.
Aye.
And Chairperson Lee.
Aye, with the 40420. The item number PZC 1602270 has been moved to date certain, January 18th, 2017. So for those who see here and turn the cards, please return on January 18th, 2017.
And just to confirm, that's without further public notice.
Without further public notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is the appeal of a standards and setback variance, case number PVAR 1602628. Can we have a staff report, Mr. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm going to approach the board to do a summary of the presentation. This proposal is an appeal of a hearing officer's decision of a variance case. The applicant's appealing the conditions of approval of a variance, which had originally requested for a street front setback of 3 feet 10 inches with a driveway with the same dimension of 3 feet 10 inches. Brief case summary. This was heard on June 22nd. The hearing officer approved it on August 3rd with the condition to modify the front setback and driveway length to be 8 feet. So not with the applicant request of 3 feet 10 inches, but with the condition to set it back 8 feet. I'm going to go briefly over the profile of the lot and then break into summaries of the appellant's request, the basis of the planning hearing officer's decision, and the appellant's letter in summary. But in brief summary of the subject lot, it's in the R1R zone. It's surrounded by other R1R zone properties. It's vacant and approximately 9,000 square feet. The general plan land use element of this property is low density residential, and it has a 67% average current slope. Over here, there's contour lines, a grading plan which shows the cut, the fill, and the natural grade. And also, you can see the contour lines from an elevation or views here as well. So it has a very steep profile. There are 4 protected trees, which there are 3 sycamores and, 3 oak trees and 1 sycamore on the property. The applicant is proposing to remove one of the protected trees, and per a arborist report, they are recommending that this one tree be replaced at a 3-to-1 ratio. And on site, this can be determined by either by the satisfaction of the urban forester, or when this, if approved, if it moves on, at the satisfaction of the design review board. This project is exempt from CEQA as a category 3 as new construction. And just moving on to the next section of my report or my presentation, this is once again what the appellant is requesting. They're asking the Planning Commission to sustain the hearing officer's approval, however, modify condition number 1. Once again, condition number 1 is to modify the requested setback and driveway length of, modify it to 8 feet. The basis of the hearing officer's decision, she was able to make the findings in summary is there are practical difficulties on the lot, which a 15-foot setback from the street here would, it would have a massing from the downslope properties, which would be in conflict with the design, hillside design guidelines. And also, the driveway, if you look at the profile here, this is where the car comes into the driveway. If it's set back 18 feet with a compliant driveway, you can tell as the building shifts over here, the height would extend, and also the massing from the properties down below would also be affected. The hearing officer's findings also for exceptional circumstances is that, once again, you know, as the building projects with a code-compliant driveway, it would affect the massing and height. And also, because the average current slope is 67% and the code requires driveways in the R1R zones to have a maximum slope of 20%. If you were to have that code-compliant driveway of 20% maximum, it would create a bridge appearance. As if this were to shift back, you would create a bridge appearance. So that would also be in conflict with the hillside design guidelines. Also,
I'm sorry, Mr. Joe, but that's assuming that there is nowhere else that we can put this house on that lot.
Correct. This is.
Have we determined that?
Well, after working with staff and looking at the topography here, this is where the flattest portion of the for a building pad can be, and this would be the best place to minimize height and massing. So what they're doing is encouraging it to be set into the hillside, as encouraged by the hillside design guidelines, and follow the terrain of the property. I hope I answered your question there.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Another exceptional circumstance the hearing officer provided within the findings was there is an exceptional width of right-of-way. What that means is the existing edge of pavement is set back from the existing property line here. It's approximately 15 feet. So their driveway and their setback from the property lines, which is right here, is 3 feet 10 inches. However, the existing edge of pavement is about 15 feet away further there. So there is an exceptional amount of right-of-way here. With this edge of pavement combined with that setback, there should be a significant, there is, not with this setback, but with this edge of pavement, there is a sufficient amount of area for a driveway and a setback. But Public Works Engineering reviewed this, and within their comments, they noted that this driveway here and any type of retaining walls it required would require an encroachment. So there's no plan of a street widening over here. So they're okay with a driveway with an encroachment permit being built into the right-of-way. This would,
Just
yes.
clarification, you mentioned 15 feet. Is that 15 feet or almost 25 feet?
Well, by these plans here, in concurrence with review of public work, is 15 feet from the property line to the edge of pavement. Combined as proposed right now, it's approximately about 18 feet. With condition number 1 of the hearing officer's decision, it would be 15 feet, approximately 15 feet plus the 8 feet. So that would be 23 feet. The last finding would, from the hearing officer, that it would create, as approved with 8-foot, as condition approved, condition number 1, it would not create a visual impact. Also, the houses along Linda Vista Road do not have a consistent front setback, so therefore, as condition of the approval, it would not be detrimental to the public. Last, just to be a brief history of this property and the adjacent property, back in 1977, there was a setback variance. And this setback variance back in 1977 approved on the subject property a 12.5-foot setback with an 8-foot garage. And the adjacent property, which is to the west of the property, so it would be adjacent, if you're looking at it, would be to the right, but it would be west of it. This one was approved with a variance of a 12.5-foot setback with a 13-foot garage. Now, this house to the west was constructed and therefore it exercised its entitlement. Because this lot did not exercise this 1977 entitlement, it expired technically, so they don't have that approval anymore. To be the hearing officer, including condition number 1, with an 8-foot setback to be consistent with the prior variance approval in 1977. Going on to the appellant's argument, condition number 1, the appellant's argument states that condition number 1, which is the 8-foot setback modifying from 3 foot 10 inch to 8 feet, will have unintentional conflict with the zoning code and hillside design guidelines. 1 would be height. Relocating this even further, so this is proposed with 3 feet 10 inches, and moving it from 3 feet 10 inches to 8 foot would set back the building pad even further. So as you can tell, the slope of the topography drops even lower, which means the building would have to extend even at a higher point. So the massing and the height would have to increase.
If you kept the design as it was.
That's correct.
As it is, there's a building behind the garage, moving it back would make changing the design, so let's keep that in mind.
Yes, yes. As of right now,
Or making it smaller.
Exactly.
the other
Self-imposed hardship.
the other thing here is, once again, the driveway max slope here is 20 feet. So even if you were to set down the garage even further to follow proportion with it, that may change, that will have a non-compliant driveway. Also, if it's set back even further, extending the height beyond 32 feet, this would increase the height above what's allowed by the zoning code. The other argument was a mass and scale. Once again, like I said, the further you set it back, the higher the profile of the building, and also it would create even more massive appearance to the property's downslope. The third argument would be grading. If you were to set this back once again, you would have to either grade to fill for it to make a bridge, like a land bridge for this, or you can have a cantilever. Or even if you were to grade up by having another retaining wall to conceal the height, it would create unnecessary grading on the property. And last point on the summaries of the appellant's letter was that there are a number of houses in the neighborhood which have a less setback, which next I'm going to kind of break into what staff's response to this letter is. Staff's response to this letter is, overall, for the most part, staff agrees, and I'm going to go over what staff agrees with. Per the hillside design guidelines, the building location and profile should reflect the natural terrain and slope. So we're agreeing that this should, as far as me as staff, I'm agreeing it should be nestled into the hillside here and not being forced out and making that larger profile. Also, the design guidelines encourages that houses minimize the alterations to land form. So as this gets nestled into here, we're not touching other portions of the land. So I agree with the appellant. This we're here would minimize the amount of land form on the property. The only thing that the staff basically could not confirm was the last statement was that there are a number of houses in the neighborhood which have a less street front setback than what they're proposing. Prior to the planning hearing officer's decision, it was requested that a survey of 300 linear feet of the property be provided. What that survey, which is provided within your packet and also in the staff report here, it's a sample size of 6 properties. The average street setback is 16 feet 11 inches, which is greater than what the code required. Staff acknowledges that it's skewed because there's outliers in there. However,
Are the outliers, are they the ones that don't have a variance? That's
yes,
my
they're
question.
beyond.
So the ones that don't have a variance are not necessarily skewing it, it's the ones with variances that are skewing.
Well, my point of it being skewed is that the average within that 300 feet is greater than what the code requires. It's because of the houses in this survey has an extensive front setback. So it's kind of skewing what's actually being there. But the mode, if you look at it, it's 12 feet. It comes up 12 and a half. It's about 12 feet. It comes out half the time. I mean, however you want to look at the statistics, that's what it is. Just to kind of look into what the justification or the last statement of the applicant was that there are a number of houses in the neighborhood which have less street front setback than proposed. Staff looked at the additional properties along Linda Vista Road over here, which are an additional 5, which are 3476 through 3498 Linda Vista Road. What the permit records indicate is that the setback ranges from 15 feet to 17 feet. So what staff can tell is within this area over here and the 5 additional properties, what I mean by over here is the 300 linear feet, is that what they're requesting is much less than what's out there right now. But regardless of what they're saying there, of the applicant's unconfirmed statement there is, staff still does support their appeal. They believe there are special circumstances that are unique to the property to justify a 3 feet 10 inch setback. So overall, staff recommendations to conclude my presentation here is recommended that the Planning Commission sustain the hearing officer's decision to grant the standard and setback variance with the exception of removal condition number 1. There are 3 motions before you. The first one is to sustain, motion to sustain the planning hearing officer's decision and keep condition number 1, meaning keep it at 8 feet. The second motion that's attached with, presented before you, or if you have in front of you, is a motion to approve the original variance. The original variance, meaning approve it, sustain the approval, and with a street front setback and driveway length of 3 feet 10 inches. And the last one, because all appeals are de novo, it's a motion to deny the variance request, which I'm not recommending, but it's for your decision. And this concludes my presentation.
Can you
Tell us the square footage of the house again.
Yes.
I don't think you did, but would you mind?
Oh, no problem. The total square footage of the house of the first and second level is 2,350 square feet.
Mr. Joe, another clarification question is that now the ZA approved with an 8-foot setback. Now, what appellant is requesting is to move the the house more towards the front with a 3 foot 10 inches
Correct.
setback, which actually is, it helps with the severe slope of the property. So your recommendation is to grant this 3 foot 10 inches.
That's correct.
I think that, can I clarify your question?
Yeah.
They have designed it with a 3 foot setback, 3 foot plus or minus.
Mm-hmm.
They received a determination that it needed to be
8 foot.
increased to 8 foot.
At least.
Their proposal is to move the whole house 8 foot back. There are other options to make it work. That's their proposal, that's what they're basing their findings on. Am I correct?
Their proposal is to maintain the 3 feet 10 inches.
No, if they had to go to the 8 feet, their determination that it's a hardship is they would have to move everything
Redesign
back.
it, yes.
Exactly.
Oh,
It-
3 foot, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, thank you.
Redesign or make the property, make the house a little smaller, the square footage.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Joe. Have any more questions for the staff?
I do. I mean, you don't have to be. Oh, they haven't given you a chair yet. Huh?
There's one right here.
Okay, so no, you can have a seat. It's gonna be a while. Don't worry about it. So, was there ever a discussion to find out if there is another location on this lot that this house can be built, so we would not have to go through the required? None.
You mean, was it ever met with staff to not ask for a variance?
To put it somewhere else that would not need that variance? There wasn't. Go ahead. I can listen.
Oh,
I don't think.
the applicant has worked with staff extensively to find the best place on the
This
property.
was unequivocally, really, by my staff, this is the best location. My second question is, did you ever look at the possibility of making the house smaller than 2,350 square feet? And would that have made any difference?
I don't know how it would, but if I can approach the board here, if you look at the elevation, you can see that this is where the driveway is, and it starts to drop here significantly. If you were to, this is where the most flattest portion of the property where you can put a building pad in and nestle it into there. So if you, no matter where you put it, on the site plan here, the contour lines are always significantly dropping as it goes along because it has a topography that drops southerly over here. So it's always just dropping down that way. So as you can tell from the other profile, this is looking at it from looking west. You can see this even also as well. This is the existing grade here. You can see it just drop significantly. So no matter where you put it, if you drop it further back, it's always going to have that profile of a larger profile here because once again, a car coming in here, there's a maximum of 20% driveway. So it's always going to have that appearance of a bridge.
Mr. Joe, here's a discussion item that I'm surprised you all did not have. Here's the plan. Here, is this the floor plan? No, that's the roof
roof
plan.
plan.
Here's the first floor.
Yes.
And here's the two-car garage here and the balcony. And the balcony is how wide?
4 feet
4
6
feet,
inches.
6
That's
inches.
correct.
So 3 and 4 feet 6 equal an 8-inch setback without moving the building at all. And that is where I think the hearing officer's decision math came from. And you lose 320 square feet from the house. You don't have to redesign it. You do lose the balcony. But at the same time, you meet the intent of the original approval.
If I can kind of just reiterate this, I understand where you're coming from here. I get that. Now you remember, the roof line is right here, right? Let's say they remove this right here.
No,
No, let's just say they remove it, right? You're going to have to move this back an additional 8 minus 4.
You already have 3 feet. You're only going to have to move it another 4 feet,
5
Mr.
feet.
Joe, or 5 feet.
This would still shift, and then you would have that.
I think what she's trying to say is that if you remove this and move this over, that satisfies your 8 feet. But my issue is that if that happens, there's a big, massive wall right here that lines up.
Well, there has to be a.
I think it has a break
There has to be
to
a
it.
bearing. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It creates the mass.
It creates
but
a mass,
it doesn't
right.
change the grading, and it doesn't change.
Right, it doesn't, but it
Right.
does give you that massive look. Wall.
Right where the garage is for a 20-foot run.
Yeah.
So on the back.
Okay. Right, anyways, so let's
I'm clear on it.
get back. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Joe. And I believe we have appellant here, but I don't have a card out there. But thank you. Okay, so for any more questions to the staff, then I'd like to invite the applicant upon actually to the podium, Mr. Myung Chung. Now you have 15 minutes to present your case. Is there any other people with you that wants to make presentation, or are you the only one?
Is Mr. Payne or no? Okay, I
No,
think I'm
okay,
the
so
only one.
you have 15 minutes
Sure,
for your.
sure. Yeah.
State your name, please, for the record.
Yes, my name is Myung Chung. I'm the architect for the project. Do I have to mention the address too?
Yes,
or?
please.
Yeah, 9040 Telstar Avenue, room number 128, El Monte, California, 91731. I've been working with Joe and Brad and the Ratardong and Jay almost a year to came to the design guideline. As Mr. Lee mentioned to the commissioner, that there's lots of things that I had to consider to satisfy the city design guideline on the hillside, not only the size, not only the grading, not only the height, not only the setback. There's the number of the design guidelines they have to satisfy. So it was not an easy task. I have worked on this project more than a year to came to this design. And then we found out that without the variance, we cannot satisfy we cannot do the project. So we have an option to either do the setback variance or the height variance, one or the other, or combination of it. Right now, we decide to do the setback variance. The reason being is our neighbors are sitting there, and the street is designed to locate on the other side of the hillside, so that it can at least provide certain dimension or certain distance from the street to the hillside, so that whenever they build the building, you have a less impact for the driving. Can I go to my presentation board and then show it to you?
Sure, please.
It should be very clear to you what's going on over here. I should have provided this to Dennis. He could have a much easier time to explain it to you. Right now, the Linda Vista Road, should I bring it up so that you can see it? Yeah, this is Linda Vista Road over here. Oh,
Now, this becomes property of the city, or do they take it back?
this is the same thing, but just I just highlighted. It's all in the presentation package before. Yeah.
Thank you.
Why don't you put it in the middle so we can all see?
Sure.
I just had to move it over there. Sorry,
No, I'm good.
Is this okay right here?
That's very good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as you see over here, the roadway designed to this hillside. This is hillside over here. So the most common property which has a similar site condition is this guy and this guy right here. And then after this, for some reason, they have a little bit of flat land, so that they were able to provide a little more setback. And then our 300 feet is over here, and they have a totally different condition. They have lots of setback over here, and they have a different condition. That's why the average setback is like 16 feet. But if you go after 300 feet, which is over here, these are the houses with a very similar condition, 60% slope. And this map is copied from the LA County Assessor's map. And then they have these houses located in relation to the property line right here. And then as you see over here, they have very little setback, almost close to zero, and which is similar to ours. And then the distance that we have on our house with 3 feet 10 inch setback from street, this is the line edge of the street over here. 24 feet 2 inch to the closest point of the house, and 38 feet to the farthest to the house. So we have a great deal of setback to the actual street, to the building that we designed, and then we have enough for almost two, car, one here, 2 cars can park here because it's 18 feet. So in reality, is even if you are asking for 3 feet 10 inch setback, the dimension from the street to here is more than 28 feet. So 24 feet, so which will satisfy the 15 feet building setback, 18 feet the driveway setback requirement, and the topography is going this way. Originally we were thinking about line up with the street, but the hillside design guideline said that we have to kind of follow the contour of the property. So we kind of turned this a little bit this way, which will make this building even farther separate. But we while we're working with Jay and Latar and Brad, and I have to kind of rearrange the design. And then the massing is just a garage. If you look at this. Yeah, the top level over here is the garage. The reason that we did the little balcony here is without this, like Mr. Lee, Chairman mentioned, we are going to have a big massing straight down, which was very much, rejected by the city architect. You have to follow the contour of the site. So we end up with kind of design like this, and then we came up with the square footage. So just looking at this, there's really nothing much you can do because of this minimum slope requirement, maximum slope requirement. There is no other way that you have to leave it there. If you the farther away, 8 feet.
Please add the 3
Yeah.
feet 10 inches to
Yeah,
the 8 feet
this is 8 feet.
Thank you.
And then this is 3 feet over here. Basically, the height becomes 32 feet to 35 feet 6 inch, because as you see over here, the retaining wall over here becomes much larger over here because of that building moving out in this fashion. And there is nothing much you can do. Relocation is not an option because we locate the house on the lower elevation side to minimize any setback, conflict. And then this is the massing of the garage. You cannot. This is a minimum size, 20 feet. So there is nothing much you can do about this. So this, by setting this with the hillside design guideline, this is what we came up with. And we try to make. He doesn't need 2,000 square feet, but because of all these steps, and we came up with 2,300, which is pretty much the massing that we came up with design guideline. And with this, we don't need the additional the variance. 30. Yeah. With this design, 32 feet, which is a maximum that is allowed by code. But if you move it out, we are going because we slope 67%, we end up with 35 6 inch, which requires additional variance for the height. But as you see on the side, we don't really have any problem by having 3 feet 10 inch over here because 24 feet 2 inch over here and make it 28 feet. What difference does it make? It doesn't make any difference as far as the visibility from the street or because this house is already down. If you look at the elevation this guy is pretty low in profile from the street. You don't see them. There are two-story buildings. If you go down a little bit, which is much higher from the street. This is very low in profile over here, and then most houses over here over here. This guy is like 40 feet high, 50 feet high. This building 3-story, and all these guy has a similar. And then this one also has a very high profile. So by allowing us to have this variance, I don't think it's gonna create any kind of negative impact to the neighborhood. And the our neighbors over there, he just I think come here to support in case there is any question from the neighbor.
The one that you just mentioned that has a high profile next to the subject is this number 3 in the picture? Is it this house that you're referring to?
No, not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Yeah. So if you have any question, I'm more than happy to answer to you.
Any question to the Paula?
No, I have a question from the staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if you can read this, do we know what the setback on these houses are right here?
When I was mentioning in my presentation, I did look at the 5 additional. So the 5 additional. This was already included in the survey.
Okay.
This one's outside. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are outside of the survey. So this one's already included because it's within that 300-foot linear.
Mm-hmm.
And then from my research, they all range from 15 feet to 17 feet. Now, if I recall, I think this one did get a variance for a, I think it was set back like 12 feet. It wasn't something, it wasn't as much as what they're requesting here. I think it was like around like 12 feet. But from the building permit research from city records, these all range from 15 feet to 17 feet. Now, it could be in the similar instances where the edge of pavement, where the pavement is set back from the property line, so or it has that type of look to it where it has the appearance or what it is, but from city records, that's what I found.
Okay,
So they don't
15
have any variances.
Yes.
These do not.
And they're
This one, I know this one does, but it's not as, I hate to use the word as severe, but it's not asking, it's nowhere near the 3 feet 10 inches. But regardless, as I concluded, I still think by variance, by findings, it's always special circumstances of the land that are unique to the subject property. And what I'm stating in my proposal, in my opinion, is that there are, related to this specific property, that there are findings to make this request. Going back to site planning, other locations on the property, I'm just going to move this easel here really quick. In the beginning of my report, I stated that there are 4 protected trees. 3 of them are at the front. So in site plan, there's mature trees on the east side, the west side, and there's one here in the middle, which is the smaller of the 3 oak trees at the front. So the driveway will go across the middle one, which is the smallest of the 2, of the 3, I'm sorry. And this one will be removed. And per the arborist report and concurrence of the city's urban forester, it can be placed in a 3-to-1 ratio. Now, where on this lot can it be? There's not many places at the front, but we can find other locations that may be in the back. But also, there's a sycamore in the back. So here's a street view, if you can see, of the trees that we're talking about along Linda Vista. So you can see this one has a multi-trunk. It's mature. And this one is also multi-trunk. And I have the urban forester's report here. Now, I believe the health of them all were in fair condition. So I just wanted to talk about that as far as impacts if you were to move the building pad in other locations. So that's something I probably should have mentioned before, but I kind of forgot that. But I just wanted to point that out as far as site planning and moving the location along Linda Vista. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the staff or the appellant? And I do not see any more public cards, speaking cards here, so. Oh. Yes. Thank you. Palma Vincenti, can you come up to the podium? Yes. And please state your name and address.
Yes, Palma Vincenti, 3365 Figueroa Street. So I'm the street right up above from them. And I came just to voice a concern on something. I'm not against this development, but I do have some concerns that I would like to address to you. One of them is the oak trees, because I've lived in Chevy Chase Canyon for over 30 years in that area. This drought has brought such devastation to the area as far as so many oaks, so many sycamores. The tree mortality has been huge. So I think we need to do all that we can to preserve, especially the healthy, mature oaks and sycamores in the canyon. With the one that they have requested to take out that's in the middle, I understand from the arborist report that it's not in the best condition, but the other two are in very, very good health and are beautiful specimens. So that being said, I just want to make sure that the building materials that they use on the driveway to get to the house, and then the process of when they're building, that they're extremely careful about protecting the roots of those trees. And I just think that we have to really be vigilant because of the very tender condition that all that vegetation in beautiful Chevy Chase Canyon has suffered lately. There's one particular property that's not, it's on Chevy Chase Drive, and I've been watching it. I'll give you the address, and that is a project that has gone on and on and on for, I think, far too long for their neighbors. 2570 Chevy Chase Drive, and I took some pictures here of the construction. But I thought they were supposed to protect the tree line. So maybe Stephanie, you are the landscape specialist. You can elaborate on like how far that should go, because these trees on Chevy Chase are huge, but they've just got about this much rope around them. So I'm just wondering, with all the debris that's going inside, are those trees really going to survive? And then my other point that I just would like to bring up is that there is no parking on that street. All the other houses contiguous to it on Linda Vista have like a white line that designates where parking can happen, and then it dead ends right after the Hayes' home next door to them. So I'm just wondering, where are they going to stage the construction? Because across the street, there's no room. And then also, once it's built, where's the Sparkletts delivery truck going to go, or the UPS truck? These are questions that are very viable, because there's a lot of traffic there, a lot of students going back and forth to Art Center. And up at the very, very top of that street, which would be the intersection of Linda Vista and Figueroa, there's a home that went in there that there's always been a problem with the approach. And so I can't tell you how many close accidents there have been where the truck goes, the garbage truck, the mail truck, but when it stops in the road, it blocks the traffic and it can be very dangerous. So I just want you to take those things into consideration. I hope you can think of a way for them to build a beautiful home there, but to also respect the safety of the traffic and the people going back and forth, and those beautiful trees to preserve it.
Thank you, Ms. Vicente.
You're welcome.
I can tell.
Yes,
Ms.
Ms.
Vicente, if you're concerned about any trees during construction, you should call the city. There's a city arborist who will come out and make sure that they're following the stamped plans for protection of oak trees.
Very good. Thank you.
Just to add, there is a condition, Ms. Vicente, in it as well, that is condition number 5, that directly speaks to your concern about the trees. So
Okay, and then also the driveway material that they're using. Is it something that's built with sand in between it so that water can?
Porous.
And
Probably
it's
not.
porous?
It's
No?
on a hillside. It's probably not the right material
Not
to
the right
use
material.
there.
Okay, but how is the constant weight of more and more traffic there, people parking, because I'm sure, like most people, they're not going to use their garage all the time, and the constant heavy weight or delivery trucks pulling in there, will that damage
That
the
will,
roads?
it will have some effect on the roots, yes it will. But you
All right.
cannot compromise the foundation of the
Okay,
house
because what I'd
with
like to remind
impervious
you
cover.
of is that Mr. Hayes, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes were issued a notification, they live next door, by the then city arborist a couple years ago, not to park their
Under a
truck or
tree,
car
that's true.
under the tree because it caused
It's
undue
true.
stress.
But
So
they'll
that's-
probably park on their driveway.
Okay, that's just my concern. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for your
Yeah.
time.
Any more comments or questions? If not, then I'll close the public hearing and go into deliberation. Who wants to go first?
Yes.
I have have looked at this closely, and I have a different viewpoint than Mr. Joe on the solution to the problem. It seems feasible that the two-car garage can move back that 4 foot 6 inches and reach the 8 foot requirement. It will alter that one side as far as stepping back, but it also, I really have a difficult time setting a precedent with a 3.5 setback in the hillsides. And I think probably the planning hearing officer had that same feeling. 8 feet will be the smallest variance that we have on record, and I think that is something we have to consider when we look at it. When you are designing it in plan view, you can change it much easier than you can when you're building it. But I think that we want to make sure that the consistency of our application of variances is within what we want to have as a record. And I would not be able to approve it with the condition that it, number one, changed from 8 feet. That would be something I could not vote for.
Okay, thank you. Any other
So then, if I may ask Stephanie, so then your recommendation is to keep the condition number 1 the way it is?
Yes.
But then you understand that now is going to add or require another variance because
No,
on
it
this,
won't.
It won't?
No.
On the slope side from 32 to 34?
The solution they're proposing will, but there's a much easier solution that they can do, and that doesn't change their square footage. It might change their calculations for the structural just a little bit, because they will move the garage portion back where there is the balcony, and the balcony and that 3 foot 10 inch setback plus the balcony equal the 8 feet, and that was really the intention. So the proposal to keep moving the building back is a red herring. It's not the only solution, and it's probably the hardest solution to propose to keep it. There's a far easier design solution. It may not meet the stepping element, but which do we prefer? It's not going to change the height requirement.
I kind of have a little, opinion about that one, because the way you're proposing to get rid of the balcony to move the garage back, and then now what you have is that if you're looking from down up, instead of seeing maybe 12 foot and then break in the 12 foot, you now have almost 24 feet high, tall wall. And I the reason why we have the breaks, tiered look is to really, follow the contour of the hillside. So I kind of have a little problem with that one.
Well, if you look closely here, it will be 21 feet here. You could
Yeah.
actually have a reveal here that would break it up. It even could be in stone. This balcony would go away, and this would still be the same. So you would not have a break there. You would still have a break here. And if you look at it over here, so the garage would come forward down this way, You would even be able to, if you wished, to bring the rest of the house down here, add some square footage. But in essence, you could reach the 8 foot by just sliding forward the 2-car garage. 4 feet, 6 inches, and
you lose the balcony.
you lose the balcony. So instead of moving the whole thing forward, this would still stay at the same height, and it would only have
We understand.
a line
Yeah.
from here to here.
Right. You
And that would be 21 feet.
21 feet, yeah.
As opposed to,
12 foot or, 10 foot or 11 foot.
I-
And a break and another 10 foot. Yeah.
okay, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
No,
you
go
off,
ahead,
but
please.
what I don't want to do myself, I mean, you're more than welcome to do it, and I love listening to all of you. I don't want to become design review board and design the property, the house for me.
Right, understood.
That's all I'm.
Right.
One
let's
thing
say.
I was going to ask our staff and legal team, and I don't know if that's possible. And,
You want me to reopen the public hearing again?
oh, well,
please.
I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If we were to push the house back and we were to go with the other condition as they were explaining to us and push it back in a way where the back wall, follow the 8 foot, and that would ask basically the applicant to ask for a variance on the height limit. Will we be able to actually do that right now and decide on a? They would have to apply for that. Okay.
Commissioner Shabazzian?
Yes.
My bone of contention here is that they have proposed the most severe solution, which is to move the whole building back and create another situation for a variance, instead of proposing a solution that has no need for another variance.
I see. Well,
And it's not being design review. It's saying that instead of appealing it, they could have come back with a solution that was simple, but they're saying, no, I have to move it another 4 feet. That's just poppycock. That's not true.
So basically, what you're suggesting is that really this could be construed as a self-imposed hardship.
Exactly, that's my, and I'm sorry, it's closed.
Yeah, public hearing is
Can you
closed.
reopen
Right.
it if there is no chance?
Originally, when reviewing this, my thoughts were, as we change the design of this and make it a little smaller, it'll be possible to work. Again, as we've been talking, we shouldn't be deciding on how the design should be, and the design review board should make that decision. But I think what we need to do right now is just vote on if you want to keep the original,
Sure.
if you want to go with what the applicant wants, or we're going to completely deny it.
Right.
I don't know if you want to allow him to speak again, or are we going to vote on this?
Unless you have a question from him, he can't
Right.
speak.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not getting any comments
Sure.
from him. Commissioner Storian?
Yeah, let me, we are open with,
Yes, we are.
All right,
I haven't
okay.
closed it yet.
if condition number 1 is kept, on the downslope, I just saw what the applicant showed me. Does the height or the massing go from 32 to 35.6, the 3 feet? Does it?
I
If you
guess
were to
not
shift the
necessarily.
pad,
Right.
then it would.
And you would need to have to shift the pad if it's 8 foot.
Not necessarily. That's what we've been
But
talking
with
about.
that, with
If you do not take the balcony away, let's not.
The way
I
it
don't
is.
want. I
The
don't
way
want
it is,
to get
yes.
technical.
The way she's suggesting, yes, there's a.
Right.
Yeah,
even
unless
though
they
it
will
completely
increase
change the
by 3
entire design.
right. Maybe more, but I didn't see in direct view. But yes, that's my I see that happening too.
Would that require another variance?
Yes. It
Yes.
Okay.
My fellow commissioners, this is my thought, since I heard, commissioners are talking about this here. And that is that, the city has no plans to really widen the street. And then you saw other houses that are built along there. And they do have, from house actually to the edge of the street is almost 24 feet. that is pretty far away. So whether, we're playing with numbers here, whether it's a 3 feet 10 inches or 8 foot, but, the way it's being proposed and the way the staff is recommending 3 foot 10 inches, really, to me, I'm not really hung up on that number. But how is it appearing as far as, they are far away from the edge of the street, almost 24 feet. So my direction is to really, it really doesn't matter. I don't think this is really setting the precedence because the nature of the hillside, as the staff has mentioned, that that the unique feature of the whole hillside here, I think allows this, and that's why we're here, this variance to be proposed here. And so that variance, whether 10 feet, 8 feet, 6 feet, 3 feet, is really, to me, I'm okay with that. So because just the fact that it's far away from the edge of the street.
One thing I just have to disagree is the planning commission doesn't decide on the design of the building.
That's correct.
We decide on the planning, variances, conditional use permit, or, things similar to that. So I think we should look at that. And this would, I'm guessing, if things were changed, it would go back to the design review board for review. Is that correct?
If approved by the planning commission, the next step would be design review.
Okay.
So it hasn't even been yet.
Okay,
No.
so then can I go ahead and tell, kind of say what
Well, yeah,
I think?
yeah.
Okay, so let me
I
close
think
the
what I
public-
would,
public hearing
I
again,
think what
so
I
we
would,
can deliver.
I think what I would want to proceed this as would be to actually go with what the zoning administration had decided.
Original approval.
Correct, with the 8 foot, and from there, that's the planning portion of it, and from there, we'll have the design review board go ahead and either deny, approve, or help the applicant design a building that's going to be suitable for that site. That's what I
So
would,
that's your motion?
that would be my motion, but
And I can second it so you can
Yeah,
speak.
oh, you're right. Commissioner Historian.
Well, we have a formal motion in front of us,
Yes,
right?
I
With
think-
conditions
Right,
and all
right.
of that.
You are three of
So if that is the intention to make a motion, let's make the formal motion.
Let me
and-
find it.
Yeah, so we would not, then I'll discuss my thoughts on it.
do you want to discuss the thoughts before we do the motion
I mean,
and
that's
vote?
what I thought we were doing, we were just.
Commissioner Historian, I'd like to hear your thoughts
Yes.
before we
So
close the motion.
here are my thoughts. This thing in my mind was teetering on whether the hardship is self-imposed or if it's not. I will tell you what the decisive factor is at this point, and everything, Mr. Chair, is predicated on the fact that do you believe what the staff tells you, that this is unequivocally the best location for the property, for the building, whether it's 1,800 square feet, 500 square feet, or 2,350 square feet. Now, if I tend to, if I give staff the benefit of doubt, and that was my first question, then the only remaining vector here will be the design, and that's outside of our purview.
That's correct.
Okay? The balcony, no balcony, this and that. We are talking about a land use. We are talking about a variance. Now, it's which one is better? A variance for the setback or a variance for that has to do, we have to go through the hillside ordinance and take a variance because of the height and so
Or
forth on
maybe
the
no
slope.
variance at all.
There will be. I was just confirmed that there will be a variance if this is changed. So my inclination at this time is to accept the recommendation of the staff on condition number 1.
With the 8 foot.
But you have a motion and a second, so we can take a vote.
So who did the formal motion?
I did, and
okay.
hold on,
Can
let
you read that
me
into the record,
see which one is correct.
I think it's
Okay,
the
so
first
it's the
one.
first
Yeah,
one.
correct.
So, the first motion.
The first
yeah.
motion is to sustain the planning hearing officer's decision, so this would be with condition number 1 unamended, is to approve and maintain condition number 1 with the 8-foot setback. Is that what I'm hearing the motion is for?
That's correct.
That's the
Okay.
first one.
And I will second that motion.
Can you formally read that?
Sure.
motion, please?
So moved by myself, Commissioner Shahbazian, and seconded by Commissioner Landrigan, that upon review and consideration of all material and exhibits of current record relative to standard and setback variance case number PVAR 1602628 located at 3440 Linda Vista Road, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby sustains the planning hearings officer's decision approving said standards and setbacks variance case number PVAR 1602628 in accord with the findings and conditions set forth in the decision letter August 3rd,
Okay,
2006.
we have a motion. Can I have support?
Second.
So we have a motion and a support. Roll call, please.
I can do roll call. Commissioner Astorian?
No.
Commissioner Landrigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Shabazian?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, Lee?
No.
So now you have a tie.
Now we have time.
Well, it doesn't pass.
No, it does not pass.
Okay. So then it goes back to the original condition of AP? Is that what happens?
That is, unless you make a different motion. But yes, it takes three affirmative votes of the commission to overturn on an appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then
Okay.
the decision of the hearing officer would stand.
Stand as is.
My packet doesn't have the second or the third motion. Can
I
you give me?
didn't see it either, but-
Oh, it does.
I mean, I don't know if this
Well,
is.
second is the
This is second and
the
this is
3 for
third.
10, and the third one is just denial completely.
No, I will move that upon review and consideration of material and exhibits current record relative set by various of PVR 1602628, located at 3440 Linda Vista Road, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby sustains the planning officer decision approving said standards and setbacks, with the exception modifying condition number 1 to allow a 3-foot 10-inch street front setback driveway length and retaining all other conditions set forth in the decision letter of August 3rd, 2016.
Okay, for the record, I'm passing the gavel over to the vice chair so that I can support the motion. Support.
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who has the gavel right now?
Vice
do.
chair.
Landrigan. Thank you. So this will be roll call. Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabazian?
No.
Ms. Chair Landrigan?
No.
So this is deadlocked. So as staff indicated, because you need 3 affirmative votes to overturn the decision, so the decision is to go back to the original approval of the planning officer with the 8-foot conditions.
So this is not even a conundrum, huh?
Not with 4 members and 2.
Okay,
All right,
very good.
next case.
I'm sorry, sir, before you go ahead, for those that came in later, if you're here for the last item on the agenda, that was pushed to January 8th, to the meeting for January 18th.
The elk.
Yes, the zoning map amendment was moved to January 18th.
Thank you,
Please go
Commissioner
ahead.
Sebastian, for the announcement. So we'll go ahead and then move on to the next item. And so number 7, Planning Commission items. So all business. Number 1, tentative parcel map, GLN number 1631, case number PPM 1426304. This case was continued from November 16th, 2016 with re-notice.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I recused myself on this case the first time that we heard it, to be consistent so that, and that's all there is, not to give away or not to give the perception of conflict of interest. I would have to be recusing myself again. And I guess the next step is for me to leave the room, right? And it's okay for me not to come back. right? I mean, they will survive without.
This is the last action item on the agenda, so it is okay unless you want to come back for the community development department update.
So for the record, Commissioner Storian, you are recused.
Thank you.
See you.
Okay, now Commissioner Storian gone. Can we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Presented before you is a subdivision of one lot into three for the purpose of building 2 new additional homes. The site is generally bounded by Rimcrest Drive on the east and Aspen Oak Lane to the south. The property is 2.2 acres, currently contains 1 single-family house, which is accessed off of Rimcrest. The average current slope of the property is calculated by the applicant is 48%. Since the site has an average current slope exceeding 30%, the average lot area for the subdivision is required to be 30,000 square feet. In this case, the average lot area is 3,183 square feet. In addition, since the property is defined as mountainous terrain, the resulting lot area cannot be less than the neighborhood average. The average for the lot within 500 feet of this property is 22,000 square feet. The proposed lot areas are 35,635 square feet for Lot 1, 31,935 square feet for Lot 2, and 28,978 square feet for Lot 3. The proposed lot areas comply with both the minimum lot area and are above the average for the neighborhood. Construction of new residences will require approval from the Design Review Board. This case was previously heard by the Commission on June 6, 2012, where the Planning Commission approved the parcel map and adopted the negative declaration. However, it was appealed by the neighbors on June 18th to the City Council. The City Council on October 30th overturned the Planning Commission's approval, denying the parcel map application, and they did not adopt the negative declaration. The application before you is very similar to the one that was heard back in 2012. There are 4 items that I'll go through real quickly that are differences from the last application. The fill for Lot 2 has been reduced by 143 cubic yards, and the cut reduced by 960 cubic yards. The fill for Lot 3 has been reduced by 150 cubic yards, and the cut reduced by 22 cubic yards. The proposed buildings have been redesigned from 2 stories to 3 stories to help reduce the building's footprints. And finally, the total soil export from both lots has been reduced by approximately 690 cubic yards. Negative declaration PEIF 2010 was prepared for the subject subdivision and, as mentioned, was adopted by the Planning Commission on June 6, 2012. The project description has been updated to reflect the current numbers, and there are no new impacts as a result of the update. However, due to the City Council not adopting the negative declaration in the past appeal, if the Commission decides to approve the subdivision, they will need to re-adopt the negative declaration. Staff has received a petition from the neighbors of the subject property requesting that this application be postponed. This petition was attached to the staff report packet. Planning Division staff recommends that the tentative parcel map GLN 1631 be approved, subject to the attached conditions. And I have the plans located on the panel behind you. Staff's available for any questions. In addition, I've also included it's 11 by 17, but I have a sign on it showing that that was the previous parcel map that was seen by the Planning Commission back in 2012. We're there for comparison purposes. And staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the staff? No. Okay. So we don't have any questions for the staff. So can I have applicant, Mr. Serge Damian, come up to the podium? Please state your name and address.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Council, Planning Commission, staff. My name is Serge Adamian. Address is 2310 Gardner Place, Glendale, California. We're back here again before the same commission, which got approval in 2012. The subject subdivision, as before, meets the zoning ordinance and the hillside design guidelines. So I'm going to reserve some time and ask Mr. Hamlet Zorabian, who's the architect, to continue with the presentation.
Okay.
Please state your name.
Yes. My name is Hamlet Zorabians. I'm the project architect. My address is 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B in Glendale. As we heard, this project was approved in 2012. And right after that, we wanted to come back to resubmit our plans, but before we did that, we made certain changes to it. We basically went on the design board and we revised certain things just to address some of the common questions that we received during the hearings, just to be more sensitive to whatever we heard. As you heard before, the project meets all the parameters of zoning and regulations, the heat side and everything. This project is the second time that is going through every department in City of Glendale. We have all the records there from the police, we're talking about the fire department, we're talking about public works. They have tested again, and they found nothing that it's actually stretching, our ordinances, and everything complies with the ordinances as such, and you have the report there. So we're not requesting any variances. The height meets the code. And the only thing that we just want to do, last time we had a physical model with us, and since then, it's been like 4 years ago. So now we have a digital model, and we want to show you how the houses are looking there. This particular scheme that we have here, it depicts a modern building, if you will. I mean, as far as design is concerned, as you know, it's not a pure preview of this, as you mentioned it before, of this meeting.
It's
going to have to go. It has to go through before design review board, so as you know it. So I'm not going to go through very much detail over the design itself. But any elements that addresses the ordinances that there is, the housing elements and some of such, I'm going to just show it to you. The reason that we went to 3 stories was because in order for us to reduce the amount of grading. Our building, the way we had this is the lot 3 that you're seeing right now. We are proposing a 3-story building, but you can see that the bottom level is only technically constituting itself as a story, but the bottom level is really hidden within the landscaping. So it's semi kind of basement there, if you will. So that concept there works. That it's unfortunately the light is very dim, so I don't know what's going on. But
the lamp on the.
Is it the lamp?
I think so.
Yeah, so if you can rotate it, please, my assistant here will help us through. If you can rotate it and show the top of the back of the building. Yes, there you go. So you can see this particular one would need some retaining walls in the rear of the project itself. But as you can see, the structure itself is going to be stepping back consistently. We have introduced to you sections that shows that clearly. So we're not just going into the hillside and then we're just creating a path, putting something on top of that. Everything is just nestled, if you will, within the contours. Now, why I'm saying this is because this program in front of you, it's a 3D program. What it is, we normally take the contours, we make the hillside, actual hillside, in a 3D model. This is the 3D model. So if you want to take a look at it to see if it's going to be, we are going to be able to put the houses there, it basically nicely checks out. It checks out with the slope of the driveway, it checks out the allowed height of the retaining walls, which they're basically multiples of 5 in the front, according to the ordinance, and the maximum retaining wall in the 15 feet, which is we have in the back. So our civil engineer has already done preliminary grading, the drainage and everything checks out. So one thing I want to show you also is that if you go with to the bottom of the driveway as you're approaching towards the north, go there. No. Actually Aspen Oak. Like not go so much down. Go up a little bit. Okay. So you can see that retaining wall that is in the back is mainly masked by the building itself. It's not that much visible. And also, I want to also mention that right now you don't see any landscaping with this particular schematic model that you see there. So there's going to be we have a landscape plan that we have submitted. Retaining walls themselves are going to have to be some sort of a stone veneer on them, and so it's not going to be plaster, if you will. And we're going to have landscaping, which will be, combination of vines, trees, and everything that is going to be, kind of softening the retaining walls. Even if you don't do that, if you look at it, if you bring it down to the eye level from down as you're approaching, you can see how the building itself is masking the retaining wall in the back. So that's not, to us, as far as we are concerned, it's not going to be visible at all. So this is lot 3. Let's move on to the lot 2. Lot 2 is as you're further going north on the Aspen Oak, we have it to the left-hand side again. So, can you do it? We had some technical issues here with the wiring and so on and so forth, so hopefully we're going to make it there. It takes a little time.
No worries.
It doesn't take that much time in the office, but here it's a little different.
You probably have more memory in the office.
So clearly, lot 3, it's visible with two stories, not 3 stories, and we're not exceeding the height limit. We are actually below it. And let's say if doing design review board, when we are addressing the design, if in case that we are asked to introduce a slope roof there, we can actually add to the height of the building, which we have not used here. So our height of our limit is just for the flat roofs. The way what we are imagining is that since we don't have any other houses on top, we're not obstructing any view of any houses. We don't have any security issues or rather privacy issues. And we are going to have a future solar panels are going to be designed within the roof itself. So that's what we're more comfortable to do with a flat roof there and a modern design. This one here is the lot 2. So you can see we have 2 retaining walls on the right-hand side, which again they're only 5 feet tall. Within them it's landscaping band, which in that landscaping we're going to have trees and shrubs and whatever you have. And then the garage is within the building itself, so the door is not facing the street, but it's actually 90 degrees towards the street. So the building itself, if you will find the sections in your packet, you will clearly see that there, in order for us to minimize the grading, we have stepped in with our retaining walls. So you're coming into the garage, then you're coming to the living space from there, and then so on and so forth with the bedroom on top. So the building, the way we have designed it, we were able to reduce the parameters as far as the grading is concerned, the amount of grading. What that amounts to is the number of travels that it's going to take to haul the soil out of there. So we can choose any type of truck. I mean, we can actually go with a 12-yard, or we can go with a 20-yard. It really depends on what our contractor will be able to do there. We're anywhere from those capacities that I'm mentioning, anywhere from 115 to 150 trucks would be hauling the soil away. And the thing is that the trucks we can stage them any way we can, because the trucks then can be in every 15 minutes they can come in, they can take the soil and take it out. If you're assuming that way, within few days that grading is going to be done. The reason I'm bringing this up, because during the hearing there was a question about it. They brought it up, and I just want to assure you that this can be handled very, very easily. These are the things that we've done. The lot 2, you heard this already, but one thing that you didn't hear is that we have reduced the size of the building itself. The floor area was reduced also. We reduced from 5,250 to 4,590. So in effect, we have reduced it about 600 square feet over there. And then also the same way as lot 3, which is 5,200 to 4,600 square feet. So we reduced the square footage of the building itself. We reduced the amount of the grading. And we've eliminated, there was an outdoors section to lot 2, which we had a storage and so on and so forth. There's another section of the building itself, which was away from the building itself. That's all eliminated. Retaining walls that are eliminated. Another thing that we have done, the length of the retaining walls were accumulative. If you look at it, we have reduced the length of the retaining walls as well. So as far as the site planning is concerned, yes, it is more or less in the same location that we have proposed, because during our hearings before, we have introduced two or three different locations for especially lot 3, which was their main concern. And so we had already done this study, but this location yields to the best amount of grading. And the building itself, the way you see it, the only thing I just want to mention again, the last thing, that we have adjusted in a way so that our driveways are not facing the buildings themselves, but they're facing the driveway or between the houses. So that way, when the cars are going in, we're trying to be very sensitive and least amount of impact we're anticipating there. So we're not asking for any variances. Everything meets the code, as you heard. And I'll be available here for any questions or comments or responses that it's necessary.
Thank you. Any questions for the
Thank you.
public? Yes, Ms. Knight.
Did you meet with the neighbors?
No. No, because we find the neighbors' comments not reasonable, unfortunately. And so that's why we did not intend. Last time, there were a lot of other tactics were employed there, which we did not appreciate that. And I'm not here about to badmouth the neighbors or anything, but it was not helping us at all. Last time, we did not meet the neighbors as well, but we had the chance to meet the neighbors. But I can tell you this, all around that neighborhood, we have other neighbors, besides the neighbors that have objection to it, all other neighbors. I have signatures, around 34 signatures of different neighbors of that community, which is actually, that belongs to our track. I have all the signatures here. That,
But you have a track on Rimcrest, and then you also
Yes.
have the new street frontage. So even though you
Yes.
you call it Rimcrest.
Yeah, two other neighbors in the across the street, they also have a signature from. As a matter of fact, what I am so much disappointed, because this is my disappointment, because a lot of the neighbors, they had already signed the consent to support the project, but later on, because of the pressures, certain pressures, that we were told, that's what we were told, they had to reverse their signature. So these are things that I just need to say, but right now I'm not come here to justify anything like that. Either way, we just need a decision today from you. So if there is any question, we'll be all available here to address it.
Questions?
You have a question?
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll bring up the speakers to speak on this case. Mr. Steve Kandarian.
I would like to pass mine for now to either.
You can come up.
My colleague Charles.
You need to fill out the speaker card.
He has actually.
Oh, he has?
Yes.
So you're not speaking?
No.
That's Mr. Azakian.
I mean, I can speak later, but I would like for them to go first, please.
Okay, then let me call the names in order there. Mr.
Okay.
Charles Santos.
Good evening, Commissioners. Charles Santos, 29800 Agora Road, Agora Hills, 91301. We were here in 2012, as you recall, in opposition to the proposed subdivision. I know there's discussion about the homes, the designs of the homes, and I know that that's more of the Design Review Board's forte, and so I'd like to actually focus on the proposed subdivision. The City Council denied the project in 2012 and came back with certain findings of fact for their denial, and it had to do with a lot of history of the previous subdivisions, and that there were basically two, one in 1978 and one in 1979. The previous developer had graded the site in excess of 240,000 cubic yards. That dirt was then used to create a fill slope on Aspen Oak Lane, 120 feet north of Aspen Oak Lane. to not have to export 240,000 cubic yards. It made sense that the project was denied because this project, the subdivision itself, doesn't meet the city's comprehensive design guidelines and hillside development review policy. And some of the findings of fact that came back from that 2012 denial, I just want to discuss a few of those because I think they're relevant and they're important. The proposed subdivision is not in keeping with the comprehensive design guidelines and the hillside development review policy because the proposed subdivision would double load Aspen Oak Lane, where existing lot pattern Aspen Oak Lane is a single loaded street. The comprehensive design guidelines encourage single-loaded streets on steep terrain. This is a very steep property. I don't know if you've seen photographs or visited the property, but it is incredibly steep. Approval of this parcel would convert Aspen Oak Lane into a double-loaded street in conflict with those two guidelines I just discussed. The subject property is 2 acres. It's a larger lot than some of the other ones. Reason for that was it was designed that way to accommodate the excess grading and steep slopes and provide an open space in the track while clustering single-family homes along one side of Aspen Oak Lane on the south side. So in 1979, the City Council had to make the best decision possible to mitigate a 240,000 cubic yard mistake. The solution was to create a steep fill slope north of Aspen Oak Lane, maintain it as open space. So then in 2012, the City Council backed that up. They made a similar finding. So our argument on behalf of the neighbors is that it would be a crucial mistake to undo the previous City Council's work in 1979 and 2012 and allow the further grading development of a hillside and an existing open space that doesn't consist with the city's comprehensive design guidelines and hillside management policies. So on behalf of the neighbors, they request that you please deny this proposed subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I have a question. Are you representing someone?
I'm representing several of the neighbors, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Mr. Kurt Nelson.
Good evening. My name's Kurt Nelson, and I'm here also on behalf of the Desais, Mr. Iskandarian, and several of the neighbors. And God, I'm getting old. I'm here because I didn't get to see you last time because I was contacted after you heard about this subdivision and I spoke at the City Council. The reason being, 31 years ago, I was here. Until 4 or 5 years ago, was one of the partners with JCC Homes. Back then we were JCC Enterprises, and this was one of the first developments I worked on. My company purchased Tract 31888 in its entirety, and 31369, most of it, from First Interstate Bank. And we built most of the homes in that subdivision, including the Desais, who will speak a little bit tonight and who contacted me. I remember this very well because when we were building the homes up there, we did a great many of them on custom pre-sale. The Desais inquired of our sales force as to what was going to be at that big slope across the street. Our sales and marketing people talked to the staff here, and the staff assured them, no, that's open space. My company, believe me, we were not never deliberately a non-profit organization. We would have loved to have split that lot into 3 and built homes. We were told that was not doable. We looked into the history of the tract. I reviewed it again 4 years ago before I spoke to the council. And actually, the history is pretty well set forth in the applicant's Exhibit 5 to the application. That, as Mr. Santos said, the original developer, I don't know how you make a 25% grading mistake, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. In error, they came up with 240,000 cubic yards of excess fill. And as Charles said, the city made the best of it. And they conditioned the approval of the subdivision 1355 that created this lot on a number of things. The relevant one being that this huge lot, the reason it is so big, and the only reason it is so big, and that size is being used as a reason to allow, because, oh, we meet the minimum lot size standards. No. The reason it was so big had to accommodate all of those thousands upon thousands of yards of fill. And so that subdivision and the creation of what is now trying to be subdivided again was that that would be open space, that the homes in 31888 would be clustered in the lower, flatter areas, not carved into the hillside. The CC&Rs that were recorded against, and they do bind all of these lots, including the applicants, one reason that they say that you cannot alter the existing drainage patterns and you cannot alter the existing slope ratios as established by the final grading is just that. So this is not what I usually do. I spent my whole career, and still to this day, mostly appearing before bodies like you, trying to argue for a developer in a subdivision. But I know these people. I was there in '85 when they were assured, quite correctly, by staff that that lot was not going to be developed. As Charles mentioned, despite what the staff report says, and despite the applicant and the architect for the applicant have said, this does not meet the design guidelines. And you don't have to believe me. I've got copies of the findings of fact from your city council 4 years ago. It would not only double load, it would not only create a mode of development that is not in keeping with the hillside guidelines and ordinances. It would take an existing 30-year neighborhood with a single loaded street that the size and others were assured would remain so and turn it on its head. So I'm not going to even talk about the design of the homes. That's not the neighbor's issue, I believe. It may be some of them. And I don't think that's what's before you tonight anyway. It's the fact of the subdivision. Just a couple of more things and I'll give way to the neighbors. Besides the inconsistencies that's already been stated with the city policies, the thing about this application is that absolutely nothing about it has changed from 4 years ago that addresses the findings of fact.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Nothing. So respectfully, I hope that you will not approve this subdivision tonight.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, Ms. Tanya Mata.
My name is Tanya Mata. My address is 140 Aspen Oak Lane. I'm pretty much facing the construction. The first home will be right across the street from my house. So my concerns are the noise, the dust, trucks going up and down our street. I have little kids that always play in the front yard, so the danger for my kids. And from my understanding, this is an engineered hill, and when we bought the house, we were told that there would not be any construction across the street from us. So I'm just surprised that something like this could happen, and I hope you guys keep the neighbors in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Nilesh Desai. Dr. Desai.
Nilesh Desai. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
State your name and address, please.
Nilesh H. Desai, MD. I'm a resident of 132 Aspen Lane, right across from where the development is proposed. And First of all, I would like to start with what the applicant's advocates said, in that neighbors said something horrible about the project. That is not true. We are all professionals. We are physicians, doctors, dentists living. I know everybody on the street. I see Bunyadi every day. We talk, we chat, we exchange views about our dogs. So that is ridiculous for you to come here and say.
Sir, you're here to talk to us.
Right, and then speak into the mic, please.
So it was absolutely ridiculous to say that neighbors said bad thing about. We love our neighbors. I know each one of them. I have been living there since 1984. When we bought that house or the land and we constructed, JCC built our house, we were specifically told that there will be no development, period, across from. We paid higher prices for those lots because there was only one row of houses. It's a beautiful hill. No matter what kind of house they put there, it's going to be an ugly, monstrous structure. We do not like this development for various reasons. The land is fully developed. There is a possibility of the slides. The hill was never to be altered. The drains were never to be altered. And that was already documented in the original CCNRC. So now here, because he bought the lot, and there is a tail coming to the Aspen Oak, Mr. Bunyadi wants to cut in, have more profits, and build 2 more houses, which is absolutely not necessary. The whole neighborhood is fully matured and developed. When I bought my land, there were only 4 houses on the Aspen Oak. And there was nothing else on the Rimcrest except for those houses that were built by Ernest and Arbach. Now we go again. There will be destruction of our life. There are children there, elderly people are living on the street, and it will create a chaos, not to mention the damage to the environment. It's a beautiful hill to look at it from our house. And everybody's house is going to be affected. Our property value will go down. And a lot of people bought recently thinking that there is no going to be any further development on that street. So I respectfully say that you please disapprove this project.
Thank you. Now we're on to the last speaker, Mr. Steve Ikandarian.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We were here 4 years ago, and when we learned about this project, we were all shocked, first of all, that anyone would even try to do something like this, because we've lived there for 30 years and it had never even happened. We never even heard of anything like that. And we also heard that we don't have a chance to win because the applicant is a developer in the city, has his real estate office there, he's got connections. We were told we don't have a chance. We organized every week, we met every week. We found the original developers who came and who testified that indeed this is a bad idea. Our motivation is not money. Mr. Bunyadi's motivation is money, and it's greed. He can buy homes anywhere else. He wants to build these homes, so either he makes money or saves money, but his motivation is money. Our motivation is defense. We just, we're not trying to get any kind of money or anything like that. We are just trying to protect our street that we've known for 30 years. It's difficult for us to organize together. We're all busy. We don't have the kind of motivation he has because he has a lot to gain here. We have a lot to lose. He has nothing to lose other than the money that he has invested here, which is minimal compared to the money he can make if you guys approve of this. And we did this 4 years ago. It's not fair to us that we have to go through all this again. It's just not fair. And it's sad. And the reason we're here is not because we just don't want this thing to happen. We're bad neighbors, like how they said we were. We really don't want this to happen because it's like we feel like they're trying to laugh on us. It's like a joke on us, you know. And they said that they collected signatures. They went to some old people's homes and collected a couple of signatures that didn't speak English, you know. And they did it behind our backs. And they played dirty. And they're accusing us of doing that. That's why they will do anything to get this thing approved. And their motivation is money. They can buy homes anywhere else. They don't have to build it here. And I would please ask you to make the right decision in denying this, because we're talking about the benefit of one and the agony of many here. So please make the right choice and say no to this thing and end this nightmare for us once and for all. Please. Thank you.
For the record,
Yes, sir.
state your name and address, please.
My name is Steve Iskandarian. My address is 114 Aspen Oak Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next person we have Helen Atunuan.
Yes.
I apologize if I butchered your name.
My name is Helena Aratunian, and my address is 130 Aspen Oak Lane in Glendale. I am actually one of the neighbors on Aspen Oak that is against this project. I have two little kids that, for their specific purposes of danger and dust and asthma and the fact that safety, that I'm very concerned with the project and the amount of work this will be. On top of that, I'm also concerned, my concerns are that the opponent wanted to, stated that this will not destruct our view. Well, it depends on what you see view. We have two different views. We have city view and we have mountain view. In my opinion, my master bedroom looks into the mountain view. And I enjoy that view a lot more than the city view. So in essence, that does distract my view. My windows are sheer, big, open toward exactly where one of the houses will be built. The fact that they haven't considered speaking to us or even lightening anybody's mood also concerns me, how careless they are to propose on their greed. I want you to speak, I mean, obviously there's reasons, legal reasons the council denied the project, but also I would like you to put in your heart and understand the fact that there are elderly and there are kids and there are multiple other reasons to take into consideration as far as this project goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more speakers? If not, then I'd like to bring up Helen for the rebuttal time of 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, very quickly, there was a comment about open space to be maintained. The two new houses, each will occupy about 10, 11, 12% maximum of the lot area. So significant open space is still going to be maintained. So that issue is really significant. The issue was brought up that regarding the drainage patterns. I mean, we can, I'm a civil engineer, we engineer drainage, and it's going to meet the code and public works engineering, and even their more stringent requirements, stormwater management plan. All of that will be incorporated in the design of the drainage system. So there won't be any harm to the neighborhood with the drainage, if any. I mean, is it not significant changing of the drainage patterns, but even if whatever there is, the impact will be significant and will be engineered. There was an issue that there will be noise and dust. We're going to, negative declaration has conditions that we're going to meet during the construction and grading and moving of the earth from the site. And with that, do you have any?
Just to take up of the, just so I want to mention that when City Council they have denied this project, we hear. That they sustained actually the appeal that was filed. First of all, it was 3-2, and they had taken their time to really analyze and go through the building. And they had actually studied the engineering very well and everything. It was not a very simple slam dunk for them to say it doesn't meet the city codes or anything like this. And as a matter of fact, afterwards, they instructed planning department to find those findings. So that's true. They found the findings. But what I'm trying to say, the building itself truly meets all the codes. So second time around, when we have submitted our plans, planning department has looked at it again. We see the negative declaration as far as the impact on the environment is already there. We see that the consistency of adhering to hillside guidelines is there. Everything is explained in your packet. Please also consider that. And then I have a map. We have gone through a lot of discussions. We just don't have the time to do that now. It might become necessary later on. But the Exhibit 5 that talks about the history of the track and everything clearly says that the reason that they eliminated those two lots there and just made it single, it was because to dump soil onto that lot to reduce their grading amount. And this is a map. I have a track maps of all that area there, which was proposal was to have different lots there. So the street is designed to, first of all, to capacity, to get both sides double-sided lots, not just single-sided. So that claim is just bogus to say that is designed to from the very beginning with a single loaded driveway there, or rather street there. So what I'm saying is there are a lot to say about that. We just don't have the time to address those issues. But unfortunately, it's as if we have to find. We have to see it through all the clouds of everything that the discussions with no basis to it that is bringing up. I mean, we're going to be sensitive. We're going to be held to a very high standard of as far as construction is during construction. We're not going to be able to cavalierly start dusting around and everything. So with the construction will adhere to the best practices that is possible. And then I just want to remind not only you, but also the neighbors that the project itself, even though it will be approved here, it needs to go through a vigorous findings and everything through the DRB. I mean, the design of it, it's going to be all decided later on. But all we are saying is that, yes, the building can be built there. And the examples are there are many. I have 5 or 6 addresses that people build buildings on 80% slopes and everything. It works very, very fine. If you do it delicately and you sensitively to the slope, you can do it. And actually, I've done a couple of projects that way, which was approved before. So that's it. So I just wanted to,
And I just want to add that the staff found that we are meeting the hillside guidelines. These are the side guidelines. So that's the findings of the staff.
So, if there's any other
thank you.
May I ask you?
Yes.
Have you done soil borings yet?
Yes. Yes. We have done soils report, and then the reports that we do have indicates that it's a viable solution. You can actually build there. That's why we have that statement there. And then you have a copy of the latest, which addresses a particular statement that it says that you can actually build the building there with the slope is concerned. Engineering-wise, if it's a field situation, you normally go with piles, and there are engineering methods that you can address that. And to me, as an architect for 30 years, if you build something there, is not going to compromise the slope. Actually, it's going to strengthen the slope because it's going to give you positive improvements on the lot, which is already a field.
So also to answer your question more specifically, the soil report finds it's buildable. So that meets the subdivision map act requirement.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you're done.
That's
Yeah,
what
go
I'm
ahead.
just
Yeah.
reading the
So,
report here.
if I read this correctly, the slope is 25%, is that correct?
No.
Okay.
It's 48%. It's actually average slope of the entire lot is 48%.
Okay.
But as we are going from site to site, the slope increases. And when we're talking about, I just want to make it clear, when you're talking about 100% slope, we're talking about 1-to-1 slope. It's different to have 45 degrees or 45%. This is actually, it's close to 1-to-1 slope there.
Okay. Thank you.
No, it's 48%.
The 48%.
No, it's not
overall.
100, it's 40.
Yeah, it's a 48% average slope.
Any more questions?
I don't. I have questions from the staff.
Maybe the question will be more towards the staff, but I don't see it in the conditions here where a lot of concerns for safety that you're planning to have during construction. Any of the flagmen or the people who can watch the traffic, for the safety of the neighbors.
That's within the
Negative declaration.
Negative declaration, and definitely we have to adhere to that. Yes, yes. And like I said, I tried to explain that even because we're not talking about the original track map that was developed with 240,000 cubic yards of grading. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the 2,300 cubic yards that needs to be hauled away from it. If we go 8 hours a day, for instance, it's going to take 3 days. So we're not talking about a sustained months and months of grading or anything like that. But of course, it's construction. I mean, we are expected to have some noise temporarily. We are expected to have some dust temporarily. And that's a right of everyone. I mean, every one of us here that we own buildings, we have to expect when you're building it, you're going to be doing your own construction later on. You're going to be an addition. You're going to have your neighbors improve their neighborhood. That's how the progress is. So it's expected, but it's all temporary. And that's why I think the negative deck was found and was filed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have questions to
I
staff?
have a few questions.
Okay.
So there was a comment about the comprehensive design guidelines and that the project did not follow the comprehensive design guidelines. I wanted to ensure that we have looked at that.
In staff's opinion, what's being proposed when you look at the elevations and the sections, the homes do follow the slope. And other aspects of the hillside design guidelines as well, but this is also something that the design review board would potentially be looking at if it got to that.
And then was there, when the original track map was designed and that area was left open, were there any conditions put for open space on that area ever, or was that not discussed?
As I recall, and I'm sure Mr. Nelson could fill in, at the time we had a different code. And so this was long before we had our hillside ordinance that we currently operate under. And at the time what we did was clustering, and so there would be an overall density that was provided for an area. Some lots would be smaller, some lots would be larger. When this came in, that's why when you look at old CCNRs, you'll see that there's a limit on the number of lots. And that had to do with the average for the whole development of what the density could be and the number of units you could have. Some lots were exceptionally large. In this case, not only did you have a larger lot, but we had a huge problem with the grading. What do you do with all this dirt? And I think it was about, I forget how many cubic yards of earth, but it was about 250,000, I believe. So where do you put that dirt? At one time there was going to be a park on a portion of what this lot was. They had to go through engineering. There was a number of processes that they went to try to have basically a place to put the dirt and still have open space so they could develop the remainder of the lots. And essentially, as I recall, and I don't have the decision in front of me, but I believe they lost a lot or two that were originally supposed to be on Aspen Oak. And I'm not going to say it was perhaps punishment for having such a huge grading mistake. Absolute potential, they never would have had those lots approved originally had they shown what the true grading would have been, because even at that time, there were limits on the amount of dirt that you could export. So what happened was they changed the subdivision map, and they said, yes, we're going to have changes in the lots and where the lots were located. They changed where some of the open space lots were located. And in this case, this lot became huge, became one lot. It did eat up several of what would have been standalone lots on Aspen Oak. And it's essentially, they traded lots. They said, okay, we're going to put the dirt here, and you're going to lose some lots. And later, some of the lots that they traded an open space lot that was later sold, and somebody built on that lot because the city said no, that open space lot wasn't usable as a park. And so you actually did have additional units put in this subdivision that weren't there originally. The only one that still remains is this extra large lot that you have up there. That's why when you look at what everything else is, when you look at the lotting pattern, you see one that's basically out of character. And so it's out of character, not that that was perhaps the original plan of the developer, but that's what happened as a result of having a huge error in grading that was undiscovered until they were already well under the process, and then they had to basically remedy it. They remedied it by putting the dirt over on the one side of Aspen Oak, and that's why it became a single-loaded street. I believe it's true. What Mr. Zarabian said is that it was not originally designed that way, but because of the fact that there was an error in the grading and the subdivision was modified, that de facto became the design of the subdivision. So I'm not aware of any specific condition of approval that was added onto this lot in particular, but when you look at the CC&Rs and the average density that was occurred under a previous code, that would have been the average density. And I would look at Mr. Nelson. He would know the history better than I, but I believe that's kind of and I'm sure he'll tell me if he disagrees with me, but I believe that's essentially what happened on these two subdivisions.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. In 2012, Planning Commission approved this project, and then it was denied at City Council. Is that what I understood correctly?
I believe that's true, but then I would, I don't believe it went through the first time with Planning Commission. I believe there was a lot of discussion that went on with the Planning Commission, just as there was a lot of discussion that also went on with City Council.
One last question. Was the original developer, Mr. Banyadi, on this subdivision? Okay.
Commissioner Landrigan.
And I think this is of interest in the history. In the CC&Rs, there is apparently a phrase that says, no further grading or subdividing shall occur. Within the subdivision, as you put in a subdivision parcel, it has to go through certain approvals. Did that happen to this lot? To this whole development? It was a subdivision map act that was approved?
I don't know if I understand your question. They did come in, they had the tentative track map was altered, and then it was later finalized. So there is a final map on the property.
And the CC&Rs go with?
CC&Rs go with the final map when they're recorded.
So the CC&Rs, though, are not considered a civic concern, correct?
That is correct. We do not enforce CC&Rs. It's up to a homeowners association to enforce them.
But do
we
go counter to CC&Rs when they state something such as grading and subdivision of this shall not occur further? Also, if you change, I mean, I know this is a modification of an existing track map, correct? That's what a parcel.
The track map itself, as far as I recall, and we could go double check it, but as far as I recall, it did not have a specific condition related to this lot, because when this lot came through, it wasn't, the original track map didn't envision that this was going to happen. Didn't envision that they were going to have a huge amount of dirt. That what do we do with this? There may be additional information that Mr. Nelson recalls on this, but as far as I'm aware of, I'm not aware of a condition that limited approval of this property. I'm not aware of anything that's actually on the map, the recorded map itself, that would limit subdivision.
So the CC&R doesn't prohibit through that legal document further division of property?
So we could ask questions.
Legal
would
wants
like to talk.
I think legal wants to.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. I just wanted to respond to that question. I'm sorry to interrupt. The enforcement of the CC&Rs is the obligation of the homeowners association, and it's a private matter of enforcement. So they would need to seek that enforcement through an injunctive order or otherwise in court. And typically CC&Rs, and I haven't read this particular set of CC&Rs, or I may have some years ago, have a process for approvals. And so it's a matter of private enforcement. We aren't obligated to enforce the CCNRs. It's a matter of private concern.
Thank you. Now, we cannot have you back here, but unless we have question to bring them back, we can bring them back. Would you like to bring Mr. Nelson back for any further questions?
The only other thing I would want to add is that we have had a shift in the code. I mean, our subdivision ordinance that we have today is not the same one that was in effect at the time the original project was approved in 1978 and 79. And even with a modification, and I want to say the grading modification occurred sometime late 70s, early 80s. So it's been a long time since there was a look at the actual subdivision of these properties.
So I'd like to bring up Mr. Nelson because our staff has alluded to Mr. Nelson several times. So
thank you. I'll try to be brief, but this is important.
Again, state your name and
good.
Yeah.
Kurt Nelson on behalf of the homeowners. First to the CCNRs. The CCNRs encumber all of the neighbors' lots, and while parcel map 1355 that created this lot came out of tract 31888, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions in question do encumber this lot. This lot is encumbered by restrictions that say, among other things, not just about architectural design, that's not the issue, is that there shall be no changes in existing lot drainage patterns. If you read the soils, I've read it, the drainage, there's going to be a lot of changes in the drainage patterns. There will be no alteration of the original grading in slope areas. Staff is very good in the memory in that, yeah, there was not to speak ill of somebody who's probably passed away a long time ago, there was a really big mistake on the grading. But and while it is true that the hillside ordinance, the hillside guidelines and the comprehensive guidelines came after the 1979 approval of this map, what was conditioned on creating this particular huge lot in resolution of that problem foreshadowed the hillside guidelines and the design review guidelines. A little ahead of its time, they said, as they say today, they said, okay, we're going to let you get away with this, and we're going to move things around, but this is going to be open space, because as staff said, other open space was lost. Remember Rimcrest Park? Rimcrest Park, sorry if this ruffles anybody's feathers, that was a political thing. I remember that real well. That was money at work. Well, we don't really need a park here, so somebody made a lot of money building a house up there. And that open space for this tract went away. This is what a big significant part of the only open space left. You don't have to enforce the CCNRs. Your city attorney is very correct. That's a civil matter. But CCNRs such as this are laid down in the approval process. I did it all the time in many cities, most recently in Diamond Bar, where it's going to be up to my boss and my current project to enforce them. If there's a breach, the city's not going to do it. But the city says you're going to have this, and you're going to have this, and you're going to have this. And in recognition of how steep those slopes were and are, CCNRs were laid down that say you're not altering the finished grade set down by the developer. So what we ask you is, the houses look great. I love the 3D presentation. I would love to have that back in the day when I was before Ginger Bremberg. And do you remember some people in the design? Okay. That's not the issue. It's a discretionary subdivision that you can squint at this and say that this house design meets the hillside guidelines. It does. This subdivision doesn't. I have, if anybody wants to read them here, I have the findings of fact, 5 copies of the findings of fact 4 years ago. This doesn't, not the houses, this subdivision. Sorry. Thank you. Maybe I'm just bitter because I didn't get the bill.
You said you have
Yeah.
copies, right?
Copies of all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think they're in
Any
our
more questions?
they're in our plans. No,
Oh,
thank
okay.
you. So shall we close it?
Yeah, so
Are we entitled to rebuttal?
no, we asked him, brought him for questions, so we're going to close the public hearing. We'll go into deliberation. Would you like to start, Commissioner Landrigan?
I probably was the lone dissenting vote the last time because I understand the rights of that developer, but I do not feel that necessarily exercising those rights is the right way to deal with that piece of property, and so I am still opposed with subdividing it and putting houses on it.
So, of course, I wasn't here in 2012, and hearing this, the developer is following all the rules and the regulations that the city has. And I don't see any legal way that we could tell them, hey, you can't develop. And we're here to follow planning rules and regulations. And just if we were to look at it that way, they have, for me, it looks like they should be able to develop the property. I know that there's some concerns about dust and noise with neighbors. I want the neighbors to know that each construction has some regulations that if this passes, of course, but overall, that the contractor or the appellant or the applicant has to follow. We have a noise ordinance that, of course, they have to follow. There are certain hours that they have to be working. They can be working during night or certain times of the day. And, of course, it's a construction, so it's going to affect. So those are all things to consider. So no matter where the construction is, there will be some noise and dust, but they have to follow certain regulations. So I want you all to understand. And, again, just reviewing this, I am not familiar. Personally, I'm not familiar with the site. But from what I'm looking at, from planning, from the legal aspect of it, the developer is following all the regulations, unless there's something I'm missing that you guys want to bring to my attention.
Okay, thank you. I'm usually pro-development, commissioner. And developer has a right to develop the lot unless there are some circumstances that exist there, that affects the very basic, I guess, rights of the neighbors or the people who live in Glendale, and there's a quality of life issues here. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you that during any type of development, you have to live with that. And that is part of life for developing. Mm-hmm. But what I heard here today, especially from the history of Mr. Nelson and some of the comments from the staff, bothers me. Because yes, we do need, along with many other amenities in the neighborhoods, and overall plan of the area, green spaces. And if there was some thought process, some procedures that took place, whether it was by mistake or not, it wasn't by design, but it was there for a reason. And now it's making me very, very difficult for me to really go against that planning process. We're here. If it was really black and white, we shouldn't be sitting here. Mm-hmm. But we're here to hear these things, to really vet this thing out, and that's why we have this hearing process. And from what I heard tonight, there was a wisdom behind, this decision that was being made, whether it's enforceable by city or not. That causes me to feel very uncomfortable to grant this subdivision. So I am leaning towards to support your, motion. So Well, what do we do if we?
But before we vote, I have a question.
Yes.
So if this doesn't pass, if this tentative parcel map and this doesn't pass, what happens? What happens to the developer, or what happens to this land?
It's appealable to the city council.
Okay.
So, will you be standing in your line, or have you changed your what?
Well,
because that makes what I do with this gable.
I can, yeah, because I can make the motion.
Oh, I see.
But why have you supported
you can give that to me.
Oh, okay. All right.
I move.
Okay, can I pass it on to?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That upon review and consideration of all materials and exhibits of current record relative to tentative map, number GLN 1631, located at 2116 Rimcrest Drive, and after having conducted a hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby denies said tentative tract map number GLN 1631 in accord with the findings set forth below. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 findings.
Support.
Roll call.
Planning Commissioners Landrigan,
Aye.
Shabazian,
No.
Chairperson Planning Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
So does this pass with 2 votes?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so just for confirmation, this project has been denied.
It's been denied. That's what I mean.
And commissioners, I have to leave.
Oh, I remember. That's right.
But I stayed to vote.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I think that was it. Really,
Yeah, we
actually.
just go.
So I guess we move on to our next item.
I'm sorry?
Number 8, community development permanent updates.
Do you have any updates? We have no updates.
Could you quietly exit, please? Yeah, we're still in session. Thank you.
Just the only update we do have, I guess, is that our next meeting will be January 18th.
Okay, thank you. Comments from commissioners? So can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.